Hello? Is anybody talking? I can't tell if my audio is working.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Now let's wait just a couple more minutes to see if anyone else can join. Okay, looks like it just does. I see that Milo's just said that you should be able to jump in 10 to 15 minutes, so maybe we can start. I would suggest probably starting by the end. Bracken, do you want to voice your topic?
Okay, so there was a workaround introduced in, I've forgotten which registry version number now, it was a very long time ago. It was a workaround to search for manifests in the blob store because the version released the day before it accidentally wrote manifests into the blob store. We don't believe any registries currently in production, certainly not any large ones, any of the large cloud providers ever ran the bad version. So there's very little need for the workaround. So the proposal is to remove it for the next release. That's run up against an issue, which is that the BuildX tool has found a way to store artifacts in the registry by using that workaround. So the question is what to do about whether to remove the workaround or not, now that we know that BuildX uses it to store build caches as blobs, but references them from a manifest list, which isn't strictly legal, but does work.
Yeah, so this ended up being a side effect mostly. I think we should stop linking manifests into layers, because that's just wrong, regardless of what's going to happen with the BuildX thing. If we do have to support some kind of out-of-spec stuff like that, it would be better to handle it whenever we get a manifest list.
So you're suggesting that we ensure when someone pushes a list that everything linked in it is in fact a manifest. So a validation on push.
Yeah, ideally we do that. The only problem is that there must be people around that already have those manifests in their registries.
Yeah, like that. Once the workaround is removed, if we remove it, then that would actually give you that validation step, because currently it only lets you put that manifest because it's able to stat the what it thinks is a manifest isn't actually some cache layer. So it's not completely rugged because it's not checking that it's actually a manifest. It's checking that it's something that was once put as a manifest. That's with the workaround removed.
If you validate on push, does that violate the spec that says you should ignore things that you don't know what to do with?
No, because we would only validate if there is a manifest. So we have a list with a series of manifests inside. For each one of those, we would check if there is a manifest in the repo with that digest. Right now it works because when we do that validation, the code will look for the manifests and a blob link as well. And that's where the problem lies.
I'd have to dig into the code itself because I haven't looked in details on the PR that you guys are looking at here. But as to me, the proper behavior should be that the registry would accept the push of the index, but that it just wouldn't do anything with it. And so if you push blobs outside of any other known manifest, it would potentially garbage collect the blobs, but it wouldn't recheck the upload.
So the behavior you're describing there would also solve the problem I was originally trying to solve, in that we would be able to get rid of the workaround, which makes the manifest path look in the blob store as well. I don't know. I think it's probably a separate discussion or a separate issue how much validation we do on a manifest list when it's pushed.
I mean, I think we're supposed to validate that the references are there for any manifest that's pushed regardless, right? And I think it's fair that since we have a separate API for manifest puts and blob uploads, that registry implementations can broadly classify these outside of a media type. Like this is a blob type, this is a manifest type. And if you push up a manifest list, which is to me specifically defined as a list of manifests, and there's not a manifest there, if there's not, you take the descriptor and you can't find a manifest where you put manifests, I think it's fair to say, hey, this is not, something's wrong. This does not have its requisite parts here. We can't accept it.
Yeah, so basically, you can reference everything inside an index as long as you can upload it before using the manifest endpoint, the put manifest endpoint. So if you can upload your stuff using that route, you can reference them in a list or index. Otherwise, not. The problem is that currently it's possible to reference stuff that was uploaded with the blobs endpoint. And for me, that's just wrong behavior.
I won't defend BuildX for what they did on their side. It's not right, but I'm just thinking as best we can to abide by the spec. The wording in there is that if you don't know what to do with this, just ignore it. And so we don't know what to do with a blob that shows up in an index, so ignore it, and effectively the index is empty. There is nothing in there.
Yeah, but then the digest wouldn't match, right? Because you're ignoring stuff from within the payload.
So the digest is on the digest of the content there. So you're not changing what content's there. You're just not doing anything with the content.
Would that work for pools still? Because if we ignore them, we don't process them, right? People won't be able to pull that index.
So the index would still have the same digest. You'd still pull the same field back. The server wouldn't do anything with it. It was just treating it as data at that point, bunch of byte streams. And so it returns the same byte stream that was uploaded to it because you can't invalidate the digest. And then it's up to the client to decide how it wants to handle that. But the behavior I think that's important for us is if you're writing garbage collection code or something like that, those blobs are fair game. There's nothing in there that we know how to deal with that says how to handle those blobs and that they should be referenced. And so they're fair game to delete.
I don't know if that's fair to clients, because if you're pushing up this index with blobs, it's going to look like it works if we do this. And then you're going to have an index that has, then you go and garbage collect the blobs underneath that. And then you have an index that's empty. It has none of its component parts there. So I don't think, it seems like we're lying to clients. Like, yeah, sure, we put your manifest, but it's completely useless to you.
Yeah, so basically it's up by the user experience. And when we talk about clients, it's mostly the tool that does the job of packaging the data and uploading. But for the user, having its data missing, because most of them won't understand why that happens. So they'll complain against the registry. And that's why I think we need to maintain integrity
It doesn't
much.
thrill me.
Well,
You know,
I don't.
I'm sure.
I,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I don't fully understand the argument that we should ignore media types that we don't recognize. Is that what you're saying, Brandon? That
Yeah,
we should ignore
that's written in the, I think it's the spec for
image
distribution.
index?
No, I think
Oh,
distribution
I'm
spec
looking.
itself.
I'm looking at image index, and
Yeah, and that's the one.
that describes manifest as a you know a list of manifests. So if it has anything other than a list of manifests in it, then we shouldn't accept it as an image index because it's not an image index then, right?
It's not right. I'm not going to defend BuildX again, but
Right.
but in that same paragraph right there saying if you don't know what to do with this media type, then you should just ignore it.
Yeah,
But we do know what to do with an OCI image index.
Yeah. The point is that we know that media type, and that media type is to represent an OCI layer, and an OCI layer doesn't belong inside an index or a list. So that's wrong. So that argument that we should ignore what we don't know doesn't remove the constraint that a list should only have manifests, whatever the manifest type is. So if it is a manifest for an Elm chart, and we don't know, or we can't do anything specific for Elm, we should accept an Elm manifest inside an index. Yeah, that's for sure, because it's still a manifest.
That was going to be my question: is how do you know the Helm chart is a manifest if they come out in a new media type?
At the bare minimum, the blob needs to be adjacent payload in plain text and not a tarball. I think that's the bare minimum, because otherwise we can't decode them.
So we've got this, we're going to end up with that requirement that it has to have been uploaded as a manifest. Do we currently allow people to upload manifests that we don't recognize the media type of?
We have to parse it. I would have to go through the handler, but we have to parse this JSON and get a distribution manifest type out of it. So it has to be something that's built into the registry and like registered.
So I don't think it's possible to have a manifest that's statable that we don't understand the media type of anyway.
It is, because there are only two options: or it is a Docker manifest, the media type is a Docker manifest, or there is no media type at all.
Right.
And in that case, we don't worry about it, as long as we can parse it against the base structure, which is config and a layers array. So as long as it has those two things, the config objects and a layers array, empty or not, and of course the digest must match. As long as that happens, we don't care about the content of the manifest at all.
Okay.
So as long as it is a manifest valid by those means, because so far there are no manifests that don't have a config and layers section, as long as they respect those two things, it will work.
Yeah, I think any blobs you're referencing an unknown manifest is a separate concern, but it sounds as though if we look at the specs that we've all written in various different corners to date, that removing the workaround would be valid to spec. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing to do, but I think it matches what's written down. So I guess the next question would be, if we were to remove it, how would we have to tell that to our consumers, the people that run the registries, and how would they communicate that to the people that store things in their registries?
I think this would still be a breaking change, in a way.
Yeah, so I don't think we can drop it in 2.7.2, unfortunately. So this PR is definitely going to be out past that. Yeah,
only in version 3 we could do something like this.
Version 3 comes with the advantage that we can say this invalid behavior is now disallowed, but the thing that you were intending to do is now supported by OCI artifacts. So I quite like the idea of doing it in version 3.
Yeah, and in some way you can look at it as a bug as well, because it has an unexpected behavior, which allows blobs to be manifests to be linked like blobs, and for me that's a bug because that wasn't the intention of that workaround. But still,
What if we add the validation behind a config option? And so you know, the config is whether we validate the index manifest.
I really don't like opening that door, because then you have like, I don't like giving the users the power to turn off data validation, because then we have to at every step be like, this is either valid data or it might be configured to not be valid data. And I think that's a really hard mental burden to deal with, you know? I think having valid data and data that we can, that should be, you know, having clean data as much as best as we can is the right way to go forward, and turning off that, giving users the option to work around that is not desirable.
Trying to think of the best user experience for the BuildX users out there and how we can give them an upgrade path. Well, the reason I'm questioning, and I definitely get the painful looks there. If we block the upload of the cache, you'll probably get a build failure at the end of the build. If you just delete the data that was cached, it'll just say, hey, there's no data to cache, I just have to do a rebuild, and your builds are slower. And so from the BuildX user experience, not validating the data, potentially garbage collecting the blobs, is a better user experience from the BuildX user.
Does this behavior only manifest when like BuildX caching is enabled? So if you don't have,
they have to pass the flag.
I believe you also have to explicitly set the caches will be stored in a registry as well, right?
Yep.
Yeah, what concerns me about that kind of stuff is that today it is BuildX, tomorrow it will be another tool, and then another, and the registry, the distribution registry will end up a mess of if else, if it is BuildX, if it is something else, and we can't make any sense out of that.
Yeah, this is why I really want artifact spec to be a thing, and that way we can just push them all in that direction and have a proper tool for this problem.
I mean, what is our ability to push that through or get that pushed through? Like how, if that's our solution, let's just say we're like, okay, in 3 we drop we remove this workaround. The way BuildX pushes right now will fail. Is it possible for us to get that pushed through and done in a way that like supports their
bit that I've heard, and I don't have the full details on this, but the bit that I've heard, a lot of this comes out from Steve from Microsoft, is that OCI is currently trying to figure out how they can add something new. Everything that OCI has been doing before this just been saying, hey, Docker did that, let's adopt that, standardize it, and make that the standard. Now OCI is saying, hey, we need to make something new for the, that didn't exist before. And they're looking towards maybe registry maintainers, people running all the big DigitalOceans and everybody else out there, to come back and say, yeah, this is something we would like to add and want to try out. And so getting some community pull might make this go a little quicker.
Yeah, and I mean, I get, we've allowed this behavior to happen, and so we are responsible now. Well, we didn't allow it to happen, but we are now responsible that it was allowed to happen. So I mean, I don't want to just close the door and say like, well, that's it, and it's not fair to BuildX users. Like, they don't care about the spec, they care about their CI jobs not breaking.
I don't know, has anyone had a look of the people who run registries to see how many users might be affected? I've tried to have a quick look, but I believe BuildX doesn't use a custom user agent, so I haven't been able to determine how many we have. Certainly we've not had anyone complain. And we're in the possibly the worst case where we'll allow people to upload these caches and then we'll garbage collect them a month later.
I have a tool that my team's been working on that we just scan through our spaces, which is like an S3 API backend, across all of our customer registries to detect problems like this. So I could add a like a subcommand to that tool to detect this specific problem. Although that doesn't help anybody else because it's really quite specific to our backend.
We have essentially the same tool. Jack wrote it. I think we could probably do a quick look and see if we've got any. They had a custom media type, right?
Yeah, it should be fairly easy for us to detect. We could also just not garbage collect them as well. We're very much in our control to, if it's linked from an index, then just mark it as used. We could work around it like that as well.
Yeah, well, I can't find it right now, but I mean, we could, at the worst case, we could assume that every OCI image index push is a buildX cache and say like, maybe if we, if you track, we track that, I just can't find where we do that at the moment. We just say like, if there's like 2 a week or something like that, then that's different than like 100 a day or 1,000 a day, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think OCR index use in general is like mega small. We do have a number for that in total, and it's not a big one in the grand scheme of things.
And there is also that a large number of registries won't allow you to upload them at all. So I think somebody checked, and Harbor won't, Google won't, and I believe even Microsoft won't.
Yeah, I tested everyone that I could, and basically the only ones that work nowadays are GitLab, GitHub, and also Azure. Others, they will refuse it. As soon as you try to post the index, they refuse it.
All right, I gotta head out for another meeting. Ta-ta.
Yeah, I found ours, and I'm not really seeing anything coming up in our, oh, these are pulled by type, but not push, but I'm not seeing any image indexes, which there must be some.
Yeah, because probably indexes are only used when you want to do something that's illegal. Because otherwise you use lists for multi-arch images. And that's it.
So I guess the consequences of, there's no way around that if we turn it off, we're going to break somebody's pipeline one day because they won't have read a release note that's 2 steps away from them.
Yeah, unless
their fix is going to be that they don't store the caches probably, because they're storing them in a registry. It means they don't have a good local place to store them. They've made that explicit choice.
Yeah, the good thing would be to buildX fixing the issue. In that issue, I propose that they could use a manifest instead of an index because they have a config and then they have a set of layers. So that's perfect for a manifest. But they were concerned that the spec implies that layers have an order and buildX layers don't have an order. But to me, what is it worth? What we have now, so something that is not compliant at all with the index spec, or a manifest whose layers don't have any particular order. They would still fail to pull. If you try to Docker pull a cache image, it would fail because the config has no instructions for the runtime. So that behavior will be exactly the same as it is right now. So I think that would work, but I'm not seeing much traction on their side to adopt that.
Yeah, right now you can't pull them. You can't pull the index because it won't find a platform for the default. And if you pull one of the manifests within that index, then you can't parse this JSON. So pulls don't work any way you slice them. And I think the image index, the image spec does say like these layers have to, applying the, like smushing these layers together has to make a real file system. basically is what it says, and that's a must. So it's out of spec. No, every way you do this, it's out of some spec right now.
If I was a BuildX developer, I'd be a bit upset if I had to re-implement this twice. I'd want to move straight to the OCI artifacts, if anything. So perhaps the best thing we can do for them is fix this in 3.1. So we give them a grace period where there's going to be registries, distribution registries exist that start accepting OCI artifacts. BuildX can implement their fix, catch as many users as possible, and then we can turn off the workaround later.
I want to turn it off in 3.0.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the problem is that we don't know how long it's going to take. First, how long it's going to take for that artifact spec to be out. And then, even worse than that, how long is it going to take for the majority of the providers to be compatible with that? Because I'm not seeing them moving away from a sort of broken solution right now, where they are only compatible with a few registries, to something that is brand new and no one supports at all. So I think they would only make that jump when the majority of providers supported that artifact spec, which probably is 2, 3 or more years away. And until then, we would have to cope with this mess.
I suppose then a lot of people will be looking to BuildX as exemplary code, so we might see more.
I feel like, as you say, both are off spec, but the using an image seems less of the two evils, and it shouldn't really be that difficult to change their implementation. Without having never looked at their code, it doesn't feel like a difficult thing to do. What they'd have to do to change from using an index to image. Just feel like that if we could push them in that direction in the short term, that seems like a good way to go to me as well.
They're the ones that don't have a. I mean, they don't have a good solution, but they're the ones that kind of went forward with something that isn't to spec. So the burden needs to be on them to work with it. And I hate to say that because we're also not doing what we're supposed to be doing unintentionally, but
yeah, but that would be great if they did that. As I said in the comment on the issue, if you agree with that, leave that a thumbs up or some comment as well. So if you get more attention, but that would fix it for everyone if it became a simple manifest, instant fix for all providers, and then that would give them time to wait for the artifacts as the ultimate solution. So if they fixed it in the next release, all providers could notify users to upgrade their BuildX version, because in a month or so away, we will drop support for pushing cache images for versions prior to that one.
Yeah, I think that's very reasonable because, as you said before, it's essentially a bug. So if we go, we're going to fix this bug, but hey, we're going to give you this grace period, and here's how you can fix it in a way that we won't break that. I don't think we can be much more reasonable than that.
Yeah, I think I agree. I'm happy with targeting this at 3.
Yeah, now the question is if we have enough support from the rest of the maintainers to move forward with this approach, and then we could inform the Docker team.
Do we do that? Do we put a comment with thumbs up on the original issue? Or replies, because it can have to have maintainer names, I guess.
Maybe we can create an issue in distribution. I don't think your PR is linked to an issue yet, right?
Yeah, there's an issue for the original bug of the 500 error.
Okay, so maybe we can create a specific one to discuss the removal of the workarounds.
Yeah, I'll make a new one for the vote.
The BuildX issue and collect thumbs up there. I'm not sure if that's going to be enough to make the buildx people to make a change, because that would be just distribution failing them. Although that would be at least GitLab failing and DigitalOcean as well, because they do it like us. In your case, it already works, right? As well in IBM.
Ours is, we believe, currently worse because we'll accept them and then garbage collect them.
Okay, so it would technically be 3 less providers being compatible. Okay, so that seems fine. Let's open an issue and collect feedback there. There are 2 other topics. One is for the V3 release. This would be one of the breaking changes that we would like to get in. Maybe we need to raise another issue to collect feedback in what should go away. Maybe we can take some stuff out, because there is a lot of that code for sure.
Yeah, for the Shima 1 stuff, we removed it from the handler basically, but there's so many tests that build Shima 1 images and not Shima 2 images. It's all over distribution.
Yeah, it would be awesome to get rid of those. We already did at GitLab, and that was a major thing.
Yeah, one of the things that's recently a user was pretty frustrated with was like the errors that we admit. The API errors are just not good enough. Like, you know, with for example, with yeah, in this case, when you have like a if you push up a manifest and it doesn't have one of its references, that detail the which things are missing are supposed to go in the details field, which is unstructured JSON, and it's a massive pain to deal with, for example. So I know that there's like a, you know, what can we do to move the actual API spec forward and like learn from the V2 API spec? Because I think there's some things just with the V2 spec that could be improved. And I'm wondering, I don't, you know, I think we should look forward to that and try to see what we can do there based on our experiences running registry implementations and user feedback. Because I think in particular the error handling of the registry isn't very modern at this point, and it's not very clear to clients what they can do with what we get back.
Yeah, and then for the 2.702 release, it would be great to have Milos here, because he did a lot of work on that already. So I'm not quite sure what's missing right now. So maybe we need to follow up on that, I think.
The cache TTLs I think are there's the one issue that's at the top of my head, that there needs to be some consensus or implementation of the default behavior. I think that's an issue I could think of that needs to be hashed out.
Yeah, there is a lot of stuff on the milestone in GitHub. I don't think that's up to date. So I think I'll raise an issue to maybe reset that list and start adding stuff that we really need to add to the release. Anything else? All right, so I think we can get some minutes back and follow up on the GitHub issues. So thanks everyone. Have a nice day. Bye.
Feel it.